The weight of unspoken words. The Houston heat in the summer of '94 wrapped the city in its sweltering grasp, thick and unrelenting. For Imani, the air mirrored the pressure in her chest, the words she never said, the cries caught in her throat. At 25, she was a radiant woman whose soul had grown quiet, the melody of her life muffled under the weight of a love that had grown cold and controlling. Imani lived in a spacious two-story home in 3rd Ward with her husband Charles. Outwardly, they were the perfect couple. Successful, polished, and respected. But behind the doors of their well-kept home lived a silent battle. A war waged with words never spoken and dignity slowly stripped away. Imani was a woman of faith, anchored in the Word of God. She loved the Most High deeply, singing in the church choir, ministering to the youth, and spending hours in prayer gave her life purpose. But Charles, though a churchgoer, quietly resisted her zeal. He would scoff at her spiritual conversations, interrupt her prayers with offhand comments, and discourage her service, saying it distracted her from being a proper wife. It started with subtle jabs, a raised eyebrow, a sarcastic tone, a dismissive "that's enough, Imani" when she voiced her opinions. But the silencing grew bolder, raised voices, withheld affection, and constant reminders of his financial control. Her vision for opening a community center to uplift underprivileged children was belittled as childish. Every dream she had was met with resistance until eventually, Imani ceased to dream aloud at all. The more she tried to please Charles, the more invisible she became. One Sunday, the pastor preached a message that pierced Imani's heart. The righteous are as bold as a lion. She clutched her Bible to her chest and went home with a renewed desire to find her voice, not through confrontation, but through prayer, submission to God, and fasting. That night, she knelt beside her bed and whispered a vow, "Father, I will seek you. I won't fight Charles with my words, I will fight in the Spirit. Make me strong in you." For days, Imani rose early to pray. She fasted meals and opened the Psalms, crying out to the Most High for wisdom and healing. She meditated on 1 Peter 3 verses 1-2, that even if some do not obey the word, they, without a word, may be won by the conduct of their wives, when they observe your chaste conduct accompanied by fear of God. She no longer cowered under Charles's harsh words. When he dismissed her ideas or snapped at her in anger, she responded with calm strength and quiet confidence. Her spirit no longer wavered, she was rooted in something far deeper than her husband's approval. Over time, Charles noticed something different. Imani no longer looked broken. There was a peace about her, a quiet dignity that convicted him more than any argument ever had. She didn't lash out. She prayed. She didn't retreat into silence, she spoke gently, but firmly, with grace and truth. One evening, Imani served dinner and gently asked Charles, "Do you ever wonder what God sees in us? What kind of husband and wife we could be if we walked in love and truth together?" Charles was silent for a long while. The old Charles might have barked something sharp, but this time, he looked at her. Really looked at her. "I don't know when I stopped listening to you," he said, his voice quiet. "You've changed, Imani. You're not afraid anymore." "I stopped being afraid when I remembered who holds me," she replied. "It's not you, Charles. It's the Lord." That night marked the beginning of a new season. It was not instant. Charles wrestled with his pride and defensiveness. But as Imani continued in prayer and godly conduct, his heart softened. He began to listen. He began to pray. Slowly, the walls between them began to crumble. Months later, Charles stood beside Imani at the community center's opening ceremony. He had used his business connections to help secure funding. With tears in his eyes, he introduced Imani as a woman of faith, vision, and strength, my wife, my teacher, my partner. Imani smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because reconciliation had bloomed where silence once reigned. She had not needed to shout or leave to be heard. She had stood still and let God fight for her. The weight of unspoken words had been lifted, not by vengeance or escape, but by faith, endurance, and the quiet power of a righteous woman who refused to be silenced any longer. Key takeaways. 1. Silencing can be a form of emotional abuse. The story reveals how psychological control, through dismissal, intimidation, and withdrawal, can erode a person's voice and identity, especially within the bounds of marriage. 2. Outward appearances can mask inward oppression. Though Charles and Imani appear to be a successful, stable couple, behind closed doors their relationship is marred by control and emotional suppression, highlighting the hidden nature of many abusive dynamics. 3. A woman's strength can be quiet and spiritual. Imani doesn't win back her freedom through rebellion or outside help but through prayer, fasting, and unwavering faith. Her transformation is inward and spiritual, rooted in 1 Peter 3 verses 1-2. 4. Biblical conduct can be a weapon against control. Rather than meeting control with conflict, Imani adopts godly conduct, honor, peace, strength, and faithfulness. This ultimately convicts Charles and softens his heart. 5. God is a defender of the silenced. The Most High hears the cries that never make it past a person's lips. Imani's prayers become her lifeline and her victory. 6. Healing and reconciliation are possible. The story doesn't end in escape, but in restoration. Charles repents, begins to listen, and joins Imani in fulfilling her calling, demonstrating that even damaged marriages can be redeemed when both hearts are turned toward God. 7. Purpose can be recovered after pain. Imani's calling to help others is not buried by her suffering. In fact, her pain gives her message power. The community center opening is symbolic of her dreams being resurrected and sanctified.